for the invitation to speak to you tonight. I must tell you about some of the impressions that Phyllis and I had as we walked around the campus and so on. I never thought that the words beautiful and ACC campus would be in the same sentence. But they are. It is a beautiful campus. And, you know, what Texans call the plant is so impressive. And it's clean. You know, having lived in the northeast where it is cold and you can't let fresh air in, and the buildings are old and musty and dusty, it is so nice to come out west and to find buildings that are clean and air conditioned. So I am enjoying that. And of course we are enjoying meeting old friends, seeing old friends. But you know, you all have gotten so old. There's a bunch of old people around, you know, and I see them maybe once every 10 years. And, you know, time is inexorable, marching along and taking care of us. It is good to see friends of old standing, and I'm glad to see Neil and her friends, Pat and Cynthia, to come from metropolitan Sudan. When Neil moved to Sudan, I told her I first of all had to learn that it was Sudan and not Sudan. And I told her what the Mohammedans say about the Sudan in Africa. Allah made the Sudan and laughed. Well, sometimes when I'm in that area out there and the wind is as restless as it has ever been, I can understand, you know, the Sudan in Africa is like that way. It is that way. Why Allah laughed. James invited me to speak about anything that I wanted. Royce Money would have been certain that I would speak what I would speak about, for he accused me always of using the L word. You know, whatever the conversation is, whether it's a review committee or any occasion when I see Royce, I would talk about the library, because I thought, you know, if we kept on beating people, the administration, in the head with the word library, they would find out where it was. When I was a junior faculty member here, I had a sharp tongue in those days. And I was invited to make a speech, a chapel talk, in Old Sewell during Library Week. And I started out by thanking them for recognizing Library Week, which I thought ranked somewhere below Stamp Out the Boll Weevil Week. And I had to explain to them how you got to the library, that you had to go around the gym to get to the library, and most of them stopped at the gym. And all kinds of things that really, some of them, I think, unfortunately, haven't changed that much. James did say that it would be appropriate if I reminisced about the beginning of the Friends of the ACU Library, which was founded 45 years ago. So I will begin reminiscing and then make some comments at random about libraries. Sorry, sweet. The Friends of the Library came about out of dire need. Need of myself as a new faculty member, and need of my students. There was a lot of need. My need. When I was a student here for 32 months in the early 1950s, I did not think much about the library. I didn't think much of it. I didn't think much about it. You know, I mainly learned the grammar of the Greek New Testament and the book of Acts. And that really was the curriculum. Very seldom was I sent to the library to do anything. And that changed in September of 1954, when Everett Ferguson and I found ourselves at Harvard. As part of our orientation, we were given a tour of Widener Library, the main research library of the university. The person who gave us the tour was Walter Grossman, a scholar of German intellectual history who oversaw the acquisitions of Widener. When he caught my accent, which I still had in those days, and learned that I was from South Africa, he asked that if I had time while I was at Harvard, I would check the library's holdings in Afrikaans. And asking why the interest in Afrikaans, he said that at that time, that South Africa was going to be very important. And that if anybody wanted to do serious research of South Africa, of course he would have to do it at Harvard. And they needed the primary sources. He explained that the library, that the good library in his terms, anticipated the future as well as preserved the past. And he said that at that time, he had two men who were working full-time in the South of this country, collecting church bulletins, placards, public notices, advertisements, everything or anything that had to do with school integration. 6 months before, the Supreme Court made the Brown versus Board of Education decision. And some of you may remember that the decision was attributed to communism, to everything. And so when you went to the South, you had church bulletins talking about that. All kinds of things. And what Walter Grossman was doing was to preserve that social history for the future by sending two people who just look at those things to collect them. And they are at Harvard. You see, this was a wonderful experience to realize that, that when you sorted the 50 miles of stacks, it must be 100 by now, of Widener, that was a new academic universe. You could lose yourself in any period, in any place on earth, and you knew that you had the resources of the past, but you knew that they were being kept up to date. My unrealistic view of academic reality was further developed later during the writing of my doctoral dissertation. During an academic year in Holland, I spent 2 years in the middle of the winter in Uppsala, in northern Sweden. There was an author that I was very much interested in named Dio Chrysostom. But there was no index to Dio's works. 5 volumes in the Low Classical Library. But during the war, there were 2 Estonian refugees who had found their way to Sweden. And they had good gymnasium training. And so what those Swedes did is they fed them and put them to work in the library to make these strips of Dio Chrysostom's words. So there were 13 boxes that would later on become a printed index of the Greek text of this author. And I couldn't wait to get to them to find out, how I could use that intelligently. Well, this is in the middle of the winter in January, and it is cold, and it is dark. And there was a young scholar by the name of Lars Hartmann who had made reservations for me. I stayed in a little hotel that Swedish missionaries usually inhabited, but there wasn't anybody there. The library was closed, but Hartmann spoke to a man, to a classicist fellow, who got me a key to the library. And can you imagine that? This guy had a key to this library at Uppsala University, and there was a room of the Carolina Institute that had every Greek text that you could possibly want, and every Latin text, every reference work in a large room, and I had the key to it. It was a wonderful and strange 2 weeks, because in Sweden at that time of the year the sun comes out, but it's not really, it teases you. This comes out, this is where I could have been, and it disappeared. And so your days and nights go together, and I just walked between the library and my room in the little hotel. And my days and nights I was completely shocked. No reference. But I felt so at home in that library. I had all of the stuff that anybody could ever want. Well, I returned to the States, and I found out that Harvard also had a classics room, the Smythe room, but there's no way they're going to give anybody a key to widen the library. But the Divinity School Library, the Andover Library, is a mile away. And there I had my carrel in the basement, right amidst the patristic texts. Everything I could want. And the librarian gave me a key. I was very active in doing church work, and we had 2 little kids, and so I would go out visiting and talk to Phyllis and have a cup of coffee. And at 11 o'clock at night, I would go to Andover Harvard Library and be in the basement, the library to myself, except for one Ethiopian guy who sneaked in and really irritated me. So I was there, you know, from late evening until about 4 o'clock, and I went home and would sleep a little bit and then go on and do some other things. That is the way I thought libraries should really be. They should have everything you wanted. It should be available to you when you want it. And then, you know, you can do obeisance to it and thank the good gods for the library. A century before I did that, the president of Harvard, Charles William Eliot, was transforming Harvard from a sleepy New England college to a research university. He stated that the library was the heart of the university. Yale did the same thing. The same thing was going on. You had these little New England colleges that became Ivy League later on. You know, there were wonderful colleges for gentlemanly farmers and people like that who could send their sons there and be kind of cultured up. But they were not really hard academic research institutions. Changed in the middle of the 19th century, when professional schools started being established in this country. And Harvard was one of them, and Yale was another. The first PhD conferred in this country was by Yale in 1861. And they realized then what libraries were needed, what they were. And these words, you know, that the library is the heart of the university, is also inscribed at Yale in front of and on the major university library there. So you had this wonderful invention of libraries and research libraries. Well, 110 miles to the west of Cambridge, Massachusetts, where affectionately known by Eugene McCarthy as the Kremlin on the Charles, out on the Mohawk Trail in the Berkshires is Williams College. Williams College is a beautiful college. I remember when Phyllis and I traveled up there in 1954, we came across the Berkshire Mountains in this little old Studebaker loaded down with books, and we came through a beautiful white birch forest. And I still remember it. And there is Williams College. Just ideal. Well, President Garfield had gone there. He was an alumnus of this place. And he said that the president of the university there was, of the college, was Mark Hopkins, a very highly revered teacher who then became president of the college. And at an alumni meeting, President Garfield said that Mark Hopkins had the idea. He said, take a log cabin in the West, put a wooden bench in it, with Mark Hopkins on one end and a student on the other, and you have a college. Well, no fretting about a library there. I returned to the big country in 1963. I don't think it was called the big country then. We still had to come up with that nomenclature later. And I went into shock when I saw what library holdings I had to work with. No professional journals in a language other than English. Were you New Testament people? No ZNW, no ZAW, no Vigilia Christiana, no Recherche des Sciences Religieuses, nothing like that. No collection of ancient texts like the Loeb, etc., etc. No standard reference works to these things. Not even standard biblical commentaries, like the International Critical Commentary. For example, you won't be surprised that I taught a course on Thessalonians. And the library did not have J.E. Frey's commentary on Thessalonians. And I lent the library my copy, and they just glued on, pasted on, you know, the reference thing which is still on the spine of my copy. I checked this morning, wondering when the library got its own copy of Frey. I came in 1963, and naturally would have taught Thessalonians then, and must have lent them Thessalonians. In those days, the library put the accession number of books on the inside of and sometimes on the title page. So you could tell this book was number 107,543rd book. Now when I came, you see, in the middle of the 90s, in 93 and 63, I ordered some books that went into the collection, and I checked their numbers this morning. So this is after I became established. And I found 2 or so years after I was there that the books that I ordered came into 98,000. We only had 98,000 volumes. You know when the library bought its own copy of Thessalonians? It was a long time after that. That, I wrote it down here, is 137,000. You know, they could do without it while they ordered, you know, 15,000 or more than that other books. The acquisition budget wasn't very high, wasn't very large. And so we had all kinds of problems with that. The dean at the time had President Garfield's philosophy. I'm sure he thought there was a log somewhere, and you put 8 Malherbe on one side of a log and a student on the other, and you have a library, you have a college. Well, it was very difficult to work in that way. I told the dean that I needed to do something to keep my scholarship alive and to write an article now and then. And he said, hey, why do you need to do research? You already have a doctorate. And I said, oh, you pay. What have I left myself in for, you know? So I had to help something. There's no use in life just complaining. You've got to go out and do something. If you think there is something amiss, it's your responsibility to correct it. And so that's what I tried to do. I preached, you know, to buy books. Our library budget for everything that we did in the department was $1,200 a year. With that, we did everything from how to conduct devotionals in Boy Scout camps, to the basic courses in New Testament, to a course to support the teaching of a program we had in biblical and patristic Greek, which was so extraordinary that it drew national attention. And we had a person come to work with us in that who already had a doctorate from the University of Amsterdam. And $1,200 on a salary of $6,000, I was spending about that. I would go out and preach on Sundays. You know, Roaring Springs, you know, anybody here know where Roaring Springs is? You know, preach at Roaring Springs, go up and you preach twice for $25. You know where Junction is, 140 miles the other direction. That was a biggie, you had $40. So you did all of those things, taught 5 courses. So you tried to get the money, everything that you could do to get your finger in the diet. Well, after 4 years on a diet of rice and water, I escaped for a year to Harvard as a visiting scholar to stop the deterioration of my scholarship. Now, my students' need. I obviously had need. That was a very selfish way of looking at it. But that's honest. That's just the way it was. Now, my students' need. And what a bunch of students I had. During the 5 years that I taught on this campus. I've been in the Ivy League for 52 years. Spent my life there. Bright students. Some of them are even in this room. Exciting teaching. But there was nothing in those years that would match the experience here. Some of you are old enough to recognize some of the names of the students I had the privilege to work with. James Thompson, Paul Holiday, Royce Money, Richard Hughes, Charlie Seibert, Wendell Willis, Alan McNichol, John Fitzgerald, Tom Robinson, Dennis Smith, Gary Burke, Leslie Klein, and the one the rest of them stood in awe of, for some reason, Stuart Love. They thought he was brilliant. Those people, they keep you hopping. They were so exciting. You know, I was young, they were young, they didn't know any better. They thought I knew things, I just stayed able to. Which is why I needed the sources and my resources. They needed the resources to become good scholars and to do things better at a higher level. That was such an exciting period that when I left, that momentum had built up. And so after I left, Stan Stowers came through the program. Michael White came through the program. It was such a wonderful period. Those people left. Some of them then came to Yale after I was there to be doctored up. These were wonderful students, and they were enrolled in a new graduate program that we started. First of all, the one that is now the major degree of the School of Theology here. And the MA in Biblical and Patristic Greek, which was a wonderful degree. I don't think it's offered anymore. We needed resources, which meant that we needed books, but the budget did not increase. We added the programs. The administration did not give us $1 more. We stayed with $1,200 for all of this. And so, you know, that meant that some creativity was in order. And naturally, I was the departmental representative for the library, and people would funnel their requests to me. Not everybody in the faculty was interested in new books. They read myself, you know. And so I would get these, and I would work with the librarians, and I became very creative to stretch our acquisition. One way was to ask other departments who were not addicted to spending all of their money to buy some books. For example, Brother Scruggs in the PE department let us buy a book on Paul and the Argonne motif. Paul uses an image of an athletic image, and there's this dissertation written on that. And I told Brother Scruggs, you know, look, this deals with athletic imagery. And buy it on our budget, you know. I would talk to Lewis Fox and I said, you know, there's some wonderful stuff in the Greek dramatists that we don't have. He said, buy Aeschylus, you know. So that's what we did. There is one, I couldn't remember the title, but it was something to do with agriculture. I think some Hellenistic author wrote something on agriculture in a philosophical way. I got Churchill to buy it. You know, that's what we did. Constantly you did that. Another way was, you know, I learned how the library worked. I don't know if it's still the same way, but you have a budget period early in the year, and you want the budget encumbered. You know, you never want to have money left. And so the librarians have to write acquisitions. You know, they have to write orders. Well, what I did, I had different titles. For $100, these books you can write one order and get all volumes of this. $200, $300, $5,000. Which meant that the acquisitions officer in the library could sit there and say, well, now, you know, I still have $300. See what Abe has. You know, and then would get the $300 order just right. And so on, we got some of those things. I also went out and just raised money. Personally raised money for very interesting things. I went this morning and looked, did a little bit of research and saw that we have a classical reference work, probably this over, that some of the people here would recognize. And we got that rather early when in the library had about 100,000 volumes. We got Pauli Vasilla at that time. Other things, you guys go and look at it and you'll see the great texts on Aristides, Dindorf, and these others. They are there, they come from this period. We have Oxford classical texts, you have the Loeb text. Those things were brought to do basic research for the future. It was satisfying to see the volumes we needed trickle in. But this was too slow and time-consuming a process. We had to do something more than that. And this was only the Bible department. It was purely selfish. It was my need. It was the need of my students. But, you know, the Bible department wasn't everything. You know, some people didn't recognize that. We needed to help the whole library. And it was rather embarrassing, you know, that our holdings were growing and some of the librarians didn't understand that, you know. That they had at least the people who were accessioning, you know, and they said, my goodness, cataloging. A lot of stuff is going down to the Bible department. That is when I had the idea of a Friends of the Library organization. Why not have a Friends of the Library organization that could help the entire library, help the English department, help foreign languages? You know, because you want to increase the interest in the library in our constituency throughout. And as my model, I used the Friends of the Boston Public Library. So I thought, well, we could start it in that way. But then found that, interestingly enough, met with some resistance. In the library, unfortunately, There was a fear that the Friends would exercise some control that the staff did not want. And I think I was to blame for that. I probably drove too hard, and I wasn't as gentle as I now am. But by pointing out how the Friends would operate like the Boston Public Library, those fears were partly allayed. We had some suspicion of difficulty with the administration of the college. They were less than enthusiastic. Face it, the library did not really function very strongly, prominently, in the ethos of the school, and certainly not in the administration. The interest was on focusing on building a campus, which resulted in this beautiful campus we have now. And so they did the right thing there, partly. A functional campus. The administration was rightly concerned that we not compromise its development activities by approaching prospective donors whom they had in mind for things other than books. I know how it works, folks. I'm a very practical guy. I will not hit somebody up for 50,000 when he may be good for 5 million. But you see, that is what development people are concerned about. When you get too many people involved in it. And so what happened was, as happens in schools like this, there was a control from the top. The administration became involved in the organization of the Friends. Who are we going to get to be the first president of the Friends of the Library? I won't mention the name, but there was one individual who was then the prominent person in Texas, and he was the go-to guy for everything that you wanted when you wanted to put your best foot forward. Well, he didn't want any part of us at that point, because he was running for public office, a certain public office, and he said it was not good for him to be identified with one particular constituency, which meant the Church of Christ. So then we went to O.J. Weber, a man whom I had gotten to know. He was a very successful corporate attorney in Beaumont. Phyllis is from Port Arthur, and so visiting there over the years, I had gotten to know O.J. and would go to lunch with him. O.J. had no contact with the Christian college. He'd gone to the University of Texas for undergraduate work, and then had gone to get his law degree at Yale. Came back to Texas, was an elder in the church in Beaumont, wonderful man. And he agreed, after some difficulty, to become the president. And O.J. came on the scene, and I departed not too long after that. But he also became very interested and a great benefactor of the Institute of Christian Studies, now the Austin Graduate School of Theology, when James was there. So James knows the quality of this man. We're so fortunate that we had O.J. to begin the organization. And I've been removed from you physically, but I keep track of the Friends stuff that I get, and I can only applaud you and encourage you to continue in that good work. But I want to turn to 3 random observations before I quit. On the matters of acquisitions and cataloging. This is the end of the library, the Friends of the Library now. It's just my love for and appreciation of libraries. The matters of acquisition and cataloging. A bad example of acquisitions is the Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Once they tried to interest me in going there, and I went there and they bragged on showing how much money they were spending in the library, and the president of the institution had a library built in his name, and their bragging thing was they bought every book that is published in English. What a waste! Not every book published in English belongs in a library. Do you have any idea how much it costs to get a book on the shelf in a library? You have to search for the thing. You have to order it. You have to receive it. You have to store it. You have to catalog it. You have to file it. It costs money. You don't put a lot of schlock on the shelves. So the acquisitions is so important. I remember moving to Texas and then visiting Harvard Library, and Maria Grossman, who was a librarian there, I told her that the University of Texas was spending more money in acquisitions than Harvard was. And Maria, in a snobbish way, said, pure poundage. It wasn't, I know what they did. But what a budget. You know, a budget is so important for libraries. One of the great libraries, of course, that you all know about was the one in Alexandria in Egypt. And that library, I first thought that I would organize my comments around that, but that would get too academic. Let me just say that a ruler of Egypt, a pharaoh, not a pharaoh, a king, decided that he wanted to have a library that had one copy of every book in the world in it. And I'm so glad that he did that, because what that resulted in was scholarly disciplines that we still use. For example, he knew about the law of the Jews that was written in a peculiar tongue. It wasn't in Syria. He knew that. It wasn't in Latin. So what he did, according to the legend, was that he had 6 elders from each tribe come together and translate from Hebrew into Greek, and that becomes the Septuagint. So the Septuagint became part of this collection. The collection, first of all, when he asked Demetrius of Phalerum, how many books are there? Demetrius said, 200,000. He said, go for it. Wouldn't you love an acquisitions budget like that? They got 200,000, then it went to 400,000, and then that ancient library went to 700,000 before it passed out of existence. What do you do with books pouring in like that? How do you organize them? How do you organize knowledge, which is what it is? Because that's what a library does. A library organizes the way we think, the way we learn, and the way our intellectual universe is structured. How do you do that? They were fortunate, because Aristotle had given his library to his follower Theophrastus. And Theophrastus had given that library to Demetrius of Phalerum, who is involved in the organization of the Library of Alexandria. So there is a structure then. Well, that library did that, and libraries still do that for us. Libraries are the places that organize things. I love the old Dewey Decimal System. I can go in there and find things, and I learn because I just look around and I see things, how they belong together. And I'm so glad that there's been a librarian who at least made that first cut, put the things together, and they are so awfully good. You know, the Library of Congress is a nice thing that librarians use. You can buy the cards, it makes things fast, it's a kind of a standard thing. But weird things happen. Roy Ward goes to Miami University in Ohio, and he looks for Rudolf Bultmann's Primitive Christianity. Just goes to the shelves where he thinks it is, it's not there. You know where it is? Primitive Religion. There's a certain logic there. I am at Dartmouth. I look for Lohmeyer's treatment of Philippians chapter 2, which is a Christian hymn. It's not in the New Testament. It's not nowhere. It's over in music. You see, there is a certain kind of logic in those systems. So cataloging is so very important. And libraries, you know, who have a certain philosophy, viewed in a certain way that it is really part of a great learning experience, have extraordinary librarians. The New Testament people know that Adolf von Harnack, the great New Testament and early church historian, was librarian for the university in Berlin for a long time. Just most recently in that line, Frank Turner, great intellectual historian, moved from the Beinecke Rare Book Library, where he had done great service, to take over Sterling Library, the Yale library system. And then after his surprising death a few months ago, John Butler, the most successful dean of the graduate school ever at Yale, he took over. So and then a recent one, Anthony Marks, president of Amherst College, is moving to become the librarian of the New York Public Library. So there are traditions, you see, of a library being thought of as an intellectual enterprise, and it is not just a matter of functionaries who put books on reserve for you. Another thing that librarians have done so much, and I don't know how it is at ACU, but I know how it is at the Yale Divinity School, and that is that the people who introduced us to technology for the 20th century were the librarians. They were the ones who brought in technology. They were the ones who got me to use a computer in 1982. And up until that point, I would get up in the morning and sharpen my quill for the day. But it changed. It's different because, the librarians did that. It wasn't always thus. I remember when I was here, Governor Connolly had a conference on libraries in Boston, and we trekked down there to this conference. And our librarians were a little bit anxious about this meeting, because it was the high point of the discussion of technology, of computers that came in. And they told all of these stories about how the aid that computers could render was very limited, they said. For example, they said there is this one machine whose specialty it is to reduce vast words to a small, a sentence to a single word. So they said, they fed into this machine the old adage, out of sight, out of mind. Reduce it to 2 words, and out of sight, out of mind became invisible idiot. Logical, but they said, you see, that's what you would have up to. Another specialty was to translate an English phrase into Russian, and then back into English. So what they did is to feed in this statement, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And at the end of the process, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak became, the vodka is good, but the meat is rotten. That is what computers can do. They're just machines that do things that you tell them to do and you don't know. Well, of course, we all know that that is not so, and we know that librarians are the people who really know how to manipulate the data, how to make things available for us. But we are in the process now as a humanist, and I can say that I think that we are being overwhelmed by technology in the humanities, and it's time that we take a break on that and rethink a little bit our use of the technology. So let me conclude. More than 25 minutes. James said 25 minutes to 40 minutes. And I told Phyllis 40 minutes and she rolled her eyes. So we are celebrating the Friends of the Library. And I've been talking about books. And I hope that there'll be somebody else who, whom you will listen to, who will talk about books and the need for books every time the opportunity arises. Your library has come a long way, or does it have to go a long way? You only have about 500,000 volumes, and that counts everything. And if you look at how many volumes you've accessioned since I left here 41 years ago, 42 years ago, ain't much. If you have the ambitions that you do have and should have for this place, you need to do a lot of work over there. There is a marvelous building, great technology, great librarians, and librarians are a peculiar tribe of people. And I want to end my comments with that. They are really servants. That's what they are there for. They are your servants. They live to serve. That is the purpose of their profession. They just die for the opportunity to help you. And they can help you in ways that you can't even think about. I'm so struck by the fact our librarians want to help you. I asked for, well, it's a different world, but I asked for a book at Yale, and the librarian apologizes for its not being there. How can we not have that book? And goes over the contortions and will see that the book is ordered and gotten there, and they will call me when it is in. That is what they do within the resources that they have. They have more resources there, but you have wonderful resources here in the people that you have. In the days of the poverty of this place, coming out of the Depression, it was the staff that was adept at preserving books that were falling apart. Walk the shelves in the library, and you'll be surprised to see how many books are pasted together still. You can still see some of the cloth bindings there. You can still see the white ink. They were preserving the people who came out of the Depression. Not much expansion. You tried to hold on what you had. They were good at that. They are good at developing. So, the place is always spotlessly clean. It has been always that way. It was a refuge for those who sought a quiet place to study by oneself or with one's actual or prospective significant other. And always hovering in sight, seeing that everything remained decent and preserving the calm was a librarian. So this is an organization that is a friend of the library. Could I ask you to let it be friend of the librarians?
James, I had no idea why you were so intimidated by this man.
I'm always nervous when somebody puts the arm on me.
I'm not asking you for money.
Oh.
Most of you, I think, know that Abe has been, for the college that I lead, a transformative, perhaps the transformative figure. We could not possibly be what we are without his leadership and his legacy. And even though you never worked in the building that we currently live and work in, your shadow is with us still. But it is far beyond biblical studies, far beyond that college, that you have made an impact on this university. For the years that you were on the visiting committee of the Graduate School of Theology, you spent a whole lot more time talking about the library than you did curriculum, though you cared about curriculum. On one occasion, Abe asked if we might possibly have a representative from the development office to come in because he wanted to ask some questions about library acquisitions. And I tried to warn the poor person before he came in what he was getting ready to face. Abe's concern was relentless, which is a euphemism for brutal, and appropriate for all of the right reasons, not for just the Graduate School of Theology, but for the entire university. And your vision for the library, and it's important for universities and for this university, have left a huge mark and will continue to do so. And for that, we are all grateful. You are an honored son of this university, and you are always a welcome part of this family. And so we present this letter of recognition to you tonight, signed by President Schubert, Provost Varner, Dean Tucker, James Thompson, and myself. And it reads thus. Dear Dr. Malherbe, this letter is presented by Abilene Christian University, the Friends of ACU Library, in celebration of your 80th year, and in honor of your contributions to Christian scholarship and teaching through your distinguished career in biblical scholarship and teaching as the Buckingham Professor of New Testament Criticism and Interpretation at Yale University. We recognize the importance of your experience here as a student, 1951 to 54, and as a professor from 1963 to 69. With special gratitude for your leadership in establishing the Friends of ACU Library in 1966 with librarian Callie Faye Milliken. Your generosity and vision established the Malherbe Graduate Bible Endowment, which continues to produce scholarly resources for New Testament studies. Your desire to foster scholarly discourse led to your founding the peer-reviewed journal Restoration Quarterly in 1957. We're grateful for Phyllis's role in handling its finances in the early years. We thank you for your faithful stewardship of your opportunities to use your organizational sensitivity, your generosity, and your intellectual gifts for the praise of God who gave them and for the growth of the Christian community. We celebrate your brilliant career and powerful influence because you have embodied what we hope for in our students, a model ACU citizen making a difference in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is just a memorial of this event. Not of you, because we hope you'll be with us for a while longer, but of this event. But this is just the plaque celebrating this event, the Friends of the Library 2011 Spring Gathering.
Yeah, thank you very much. I wish that I looked like that. It's quite a fantastic